Good evening. Welcome to the February 22nd meeting of the City of Daytona Beach Planning Board. We welcome your interest in moving our city forward, and we're glad to have you here this evening. If I could ask Lucy to give the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bahu.
Present.
Mr. McLean.
Here.
Mr. Newman.
Present.
Mr. Robinson.
Present.
Mr. Servants.
Present.
Mr. Weatherholtz. And Ms. Washington is absent. You have a quorum.
Ms. Washington's steady presence this
Yeah.
evening. So hopefully she's fine and she'll be with us next month. Let's move on, we could, to item number 3, approval of the minutes of January 25th, 2024 meeting. Looking for a motion, fellow members?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second, excellent. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Moving ahead, any citizens, folks, that want to address the board concerning items on the agenda, we ask you to fill out the green consent form. Pretend I'm holding one up. That's what it would be. When you come to the lantern, please state your name and address for the record. We have a time limit of 3 minutes, but if you can get your point made in less than 3 minutes, we won't complain. So, but you do have those 3 minutes if you need to. Let's move, if we could, to item number 4. Lucy, could you read that item for us?
Amendment to Tomoka Town Center PD, Plan Development General, PDG, rezoning, DEV 2023-405, quasi-judicial hearing.
Excellent, thank you. Hear from staff. Anna, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
All right, this is a request by Jessica Gao with Cobb Cole, and it's on behalf of Ashley Global Retail LLC, property owner, and it's to amend the Tomoka Town Center PD to increase the maximum permitted wall signage specific to Lot 8 of Parcel A, which is the Ashley Furniture Store that's under construction. So the site is located at 1270 Cornerstone Boulevard, and it has frontage along 95, as you can see from the location map. It's on the east side of 95, it's south of LPGA and west of Williamson Boulevard. The aerial view of the property, this is probably not as up to date as what's currently going on, but it reflects that Tomoka Town Center overall is vacant and partially developed, and the Ashley Furniture Store on Lot 8 is currently under construction. The zoning on the property is Plan Development General. It's within the Tomoka Town Center PD, and that remains unchanged with this proposed amendment. The future land use on the property is split between interchange commercial along I-95 and then also mixed use on the remainder of Tomoka Town Center. So just to give you a brief overview of the project history so far, the City Commission approved the Tomoka Town Center PD for a mixed use development on 118 acres in 2017. In 2019, the City Commission approved the first amendment to increase the density on the property, reduce the floor area ratio, modify some of the lot development criteria, and provide a more specific sign plan and sign criteria for the project. In 2021, the City Commission approved the second amendment to the Tomoka Town Center PD, which increased overall density for residential units from 550 dwelling units to 719 dwelling units. Then in 2022, the Planning Board approved the site plan for construction of a 61,057 square foot Ashley Furniture Store. In 2023, the City Commission approved the third amendment to the PD, which increased the non-residential square footage for Parcel A, which is with frontage along I-95, from 225,000 square feet to 450,000 square feet. And then in 2023, the City Commission approved the fourth amendment to modify the development standards associated with a multifamily complex to allow for a for-rent townhome product on the undeveloped portion of Parcel B. So now they've requested the fifth amendment, which is specific just to Lot 8 within Parcel A. That's the Ashley Furniture Store. And they're requesting to increase the maximum permitted wall signage for Lot 8 from 400 square feet, which is currently permitted for the lots within the PD, to 2,758 square feet. And I've provided a table showing the breakdown of the wall signage that's being requested for each of the elevations on the slides. And this represents an increase from what's permitted by the LDC, which is a 200 square foot max. The PD allows for the 400 square foot, and they're requesting to go to the 2,758. The square footages are broken down by each facade of the structure, as you can see on the screen, and then they have provided a detailed exhibit outlining the permissible sign locations and the intended locations of the proposed signs with their calculated square footages. So if you can see, all four sides of the building are shown. The red dotted line indicates the area that would be permitted for the sign, and they calculated the square footage shown in this table based on the permissible sign zones that they're requesting on the building. So you can kind of see the scale of the wall signage to the overall sides of the building. So provided all LDC modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval of the Fifth Amendment to the Tomoka Town Center PD to increase the maximum permitted wall signage for Ashley Furniture on Lot 8 of Parcel A within Tomoka Town Center. A majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission, and the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard for first reading on April 3rd and for second reading on April 17th, 2024. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Great job, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I ask for any comments from our board, just had a comment. It's much more of a Dennis question than anyone else. Is we have seen in the last year and a half, fellow members, a lot of requests for signage that have been considerably larger than our LDC requirements allow. Now, we also understand that there are good reasons for it and sometimes unusual circumstances, and we've had very much in the past a lot of discussion and work has gone on to what currently our standards are. Dennis, I guess my question would be, is this time now to re-examine some of these standards in circumstances like this one, where we don't have a scenario where we're going from, in this case, 400 square feet to 2,700? I mean, that's a magnitude of 6 times. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Well, if you're talking about making changes to our land development code to address signage, we're always looking at that. You know, just recently we had taken a change to our land development code to add EMC signs wherever we have signage permitted. So it's always something that we're taking a look at. We can take a look at our sign code and see if there's opportunities to make additional changes. It's difficult sometimes, though. When you take a look at a site like this is a site that's not typical in the city of Daytona Beach. So to be able to write a sign code that would be site specific to say in this particular area with these particular circumstances, with the you know, where you're near 95 or LPGA or the larger buildings, to be able to write sign codes that would allow a different type of signage for that building versus a different type of signage for another building that might not be in that part of the city. So it's kind of difficult to make that change to the code, which is why we have PDs, so that we can have a little bit of flex, so we can say, okay, this particular location, this particular building at this site, does it merit a different type of signage than maybe something on Beach Street? And so you can take a look at it specifically and say, is it appropriate for this location? And so you would have to take, as a PD, you look specifically at this site and say, is this appropriate for this location, for this type of signage? So that's why we go through the PD process. That's why we have the flexibility. If you know Tomoka Town Center, you know that the signage out there, they've got a lot of different types of signage out there. You know, you're dealing with 95, people driving 75 miles an hour down 95. You only get a quick opportunity to see the signage. So you have to be able to sell that. The other thing with this particular type of building, you've got visibility from all 4 sides. So it's not just the one side you're talking about with the 400 square feet. You're talking about all sides have to have visibility. So you want to be able to allow signage for that as well. So those are the things that you have to take into account. Very difficult to write a code to be able to do that per location on something like this. So that's why we do the PDs. But we can take a look and see where there are opportunities to maybe tweak the sign code to allow some flex to be able to have this. We can look at other codes in other cities and see what they maybe do, and see if we can copy something like that to do something that might be appropriate.
Yeah, and that's my thought, Dennis, is to see if there's some opportunities for commonality among some of these projects that we've looked at in the past. And You can also get into, obviously, we want to be sure that the signs are big enough so people know where they're going, but we also don't want to make them too big where we could be getting into the arena of attractive nuisance and maybe causing challenges from that standpoint.
Yeah,
So-
you know, and I don't want to belittle the point, but the whole point of the PD process, even in the PD section itself, it talks about the signage that each PD has its own signage plan specific to that development that's appropriate for that development. So that's something, and so, you know, when you see a comparison of 400, well, the code says 400 square feet, well, that very generically, that's what the code says on signage, doesn't take into account some of the nuances that you might find like this particular
Okay,
location.
well,
So-
I appreciate at least making an effort there and see if there's some opportunities. If not, I appreciate that explanation.
You
So-
know, it seems that along the I-95 for the large, you know,
Certainly a lot of them.
fast one, story. Why couldn't you write something for that area? You know, I don't think you want signs. Beach. You could make it for the, you know, the I-95 corridor, their I-4 corridor, or something like that, an interstate highway. That you could be specific, and then, you know, and make it large, you know.
Mhm.
I see no problem with large signs, because you've got cars going by at a higher speed than you do on normal roads, so you want the visibility on the signs. But, you know, you're talking about a building with 4 sides,
Mhm.
or, you know, and I don't think the signs that are facing away from 95 should just arbitrarily be the same size as facing 95. And so, you know, you could write something in accordance with that and, you know, make that your standard. There's always, you know, a variance or an exception.
Sure. And we can take a look at that. I don't want to occupy the applicant's time with his specific request on this one, but it's something that planning staff, we can take a look at, maybe opportunities that we have to look at the sign code and open that up and be able to see what opportunities we might have.
Well, that's more than fair. I appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you. Any other questions either
Yes,
on this
I have
subject
one.
or, please, Mr. Newman,
I have a
please write in.
question. How does this signage increase compare to other buildings in the Tomoka Town Square or in the surrounding area?
So all buildings in Tomoka Town Center are limited to maximum 400 square feet of wall signage unless they come in and request an amendment.
But are there any other buildings around that have gotten an increase in their PD? And
Okay.
and were the increases of a similar increase?
Hannah, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
didn't notice that.
Testing.
I'm
Testing.
testing 1, 2.
Got me.
I hear you. If that
All right.
helps. Mr. Merrill.
Rob Merrill with the Cobb Cole Law Firm, 149 South Ridgewood. I am not Jessica Gauss, so I have gray hair and probably not as much charm, but my best. I actually brought a bag of tricks. I like I had some paper exhibits.
Thank you.
David, you get one too. Jamie, I'll try to answer your question in just a second. I'll start by saying thank you, Hannah. Always appreciate your presentation. And I want to give a little bit of background, slightly beyond it, and a little bit dig into what Hannah talked about in terms of existing PD. I can't believe 2007. We did the original PD, and with that, we actually did something that was very similar to what I did with the Speedway some years ago, which is a comprehensive sign plan. So we created this structure of a comprehensive sign plan, and it's kind of like a PUD for signs. And it basically maps out what you can and can't do in a lot of detail. And in this case, when you look, if you were looking through the PD documents, I think it's Exhibit B or E of the bigger document that we're amending here tonight. It has, just like you see in your packet, it has blocks of where you could put signs on buildings. And so I went back and I looked through a couple of them that are similar to the Ashley Furniture building in that they have 4 sides. Now, in this case, like you mentioned, Vernon, the I-95 sign is conspicuous because you're going fast when you go by it. But the other ones that I looked at were not facing 95, but they did have 4 sides to them. So the bigger shopping center is more of a traditional center where there's a main side and then there's ends, but all the insides are walls against walls, and the back is the back. But if you look at the first one I picked out is Dave & Buster's. Have you guys been out there to see Dave & Buster's?
Certainly.
So that one's 4-sided, and they actually, when you look through the exhibits that we did for the PUD, it shows a little arrow that shows what can be done on each of the 4 sides. So as I went through the arrows, I added up the square footage of the allowances for Dave & Buster's, and it's 5,715 square feet. So we're way less than that. But I think that building's actually smaller, and like I said, it doesn't face 95. So when you talk about those numbers, you can't really understand them until you see them. And if you drove out there and drove around Dave & Buster's, you say, well, makes sense. Well, you guys have heard me talk about signs, ad nauseum, so I'm not going to go way down the road of the sign, what you do with signs, but I think you understand the basic concepts. You got to look at it and see it looks to scale, and it's proportional and appropriate and not distracting to people who are walking or driving, And when you look at the signs that I just passed out to you, we had the sign company, Ashley had the sign company go ahead and put them on the buildings so you could see what that actually looked like with the type. And so when you look at it, you guys get to decide, not me, but it's to scale, it's proportional, it's not distasteful or obnoxious. And that's really what you look at with signage, right? And believe me, we did that at length with the EMC signage when I kind of partnered with the city to come up with the plan for that way back when. But again, so the second one I looked at as I looked through the exhibits here is Buster's and Hobby Lobby. So at the opposite side of the center was another one that had 4 sides. You could see it from all the way around, pedestrians or vehiculars. And it was a total of 5,589 square feet of all the way around the building. So again, when you start adding up big buildings and 4 sides, even if they're tastefully sized, it's a lot of square footage. So again, and this one's more than or almost twice as much as we're talking about here. So when you start to put it in focus, and so it was a very good question, that's the answer. And in this case, I guess there's not much more to say other than look at the picture, and that's what we're bringing. So hopefully this works for you guys.
Yeah, and Rob, I speaking personally, don't have an issue with the overall size. I agree it's appropriate for the size of the building and also for the exposures that's out there. My question to Dennis was more internal than
So Mike, I'll say, as far as the code goes, when we talk about these things, when you're making major overhauls, like Vern is talking about, making an I-95 corridor sign plan, a lot of times having the private sector in the conversation is helpful. And we have used V-Card as a vehicle to be involved in that. V-Card had a committee that I actually chaired that did the rewrite of the land development codes. I want to say it's 2 or 3 years ago. It's probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it turned out to be, 800 or 900 pages of new code. I think we kind of stayed away from a lot of the sign stuff because I think the EMC thing was still a little bit radioactive, and we were still working on that separately. But that can be something that we would volunteer to be part of helping you guys with. So I think that there's some good ideas. I think that there are some things that have changed in Daytona since the sign code was written that we ought to be thinking about. And you just did it with the EMC. That was a radioactive thing for a long, long time for reasons that I won't get into. But we changed that, and now we look at it and it looks okay. It looks tasteful, and to me, it works better because you have smaller copy that changes. So multiple tenants, for instance, can be on the same size sign. It doesn't have to have 400 panels as long as it changes enough that people get to see, oh, that's my store I'm going to.
Mm-hmm. I agree with the signage on what you have here. The problem is, you know, Jack and Jill, they're having a storefront and they want a sign equal as large or twice as large or 10 times as large as what's on the code. And so that's where the code has to be specific, you know, for say like the corridor. And, you know, and keep it such, you know, similar to what we have now in all the other areas. Because if you start making exception, okay, you know, they're going to widen, you know, whatever road. They want the same consideration. It might not have the traffic. It might be at a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it might sit closer to the road. So see, these are the variances that you have. You start getting into a quandary with having this large scale unless you just have it in such a way that it designates a certain area. And that's why I say the I-95 corridor. That would be an area where you could have this, and I see no
I
problem
think
with
that
it.
the current PD process really answers that in, excuse me, in itself. If it's an area where they need larger signage, they pull a PD, they get their larger signage. We
But-
get a chance to look over it and approve it
But all-
and ensure that it's appropriate for where it is.
But all of
I mean,
the new subdivisions, you know, you know, it used to be you'd have an entrance sign. And now you've got multiple entrances and they want larger signs at each entrance. So, you know, the signage means a lot, and you don't want to drive down the road and see nothing but signs and you can't see anything else. That's what the problem it gets into.
Well, that's the point, is that hopefully we can at least, on occasion, examine what we have, see what's reasonable that can be done, maybe discuss reasons why it can't be done. But I think it's helpful, it seems like we've had a run lately of a lot of considerable expansion from the land development code using the PD process, certainly legitimate, and I agree with Vernon, I certainly have no issue with the item today. But I thought this was an opportunity to be able to mention to staff to take another look, and I appreciate you stepping up, Rob, to say that you.
Just let us know if you want us to jump in and help. We're happy to do it.
With that, any specific questions we have for Rob? Mr. Robinson. Go right ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair. I was a little bit confused at first. 400 square feet is the maximum.
Yeah, so I meant to explain this. I didn't explain it well enough. I forgot to say, because Hannah said the 400. When you look at the signage plan that was adopted for Tomoka Town Center, we mapped out everything. And for instance, the Dave & Buster's at 6,000 square feet and the Hobby Lobby at 5,000, whatever those ones were I told you about, those were in that map, you know, that template that was provided. But we had these two big out parcels, one of which we're talking about tonight, that we didn't know what was going to go there. So what we did was we just put a placeholder in, and we said we'll come back and do this later. So the 400 was a placeholder. We knew that there's no way that they could do Ashley Furniture Store with 400 square feet with four-sided building, but we didn't know it was going to be Ashley Furniture. So we just stayed away from that.
So the 400 is the total amount of square footage?
The
for
400
one
could, the
building?
400 could have been 4. It could have been 20. It doesn't. It was just a placeholder.
No, I'm just trying to get to a better understanding. When you say 400 square feet, it's for the total building,
Everything.
not one side or four sides?
The whole
or
thing.
whatever. What I would have liked to have seen is you maybe give me an illustration of what the 400 square feet would have looked, so I can have an idea if this is appropriate or not.
Well,
You know, it doesn't mean that I agree with Dave & Buster or Hobby Lobby with their signs, because, you know, it's bigger doesn't make it better.
no.
Bigger doesn't make it look, you know, attractive or will motivate me to come into the facility. So I would have wanted to see, okay, this is the current picture of what it would look like if we accept the LDC. placeholder. And this is what it looks like, so we can have a comparison. That would have been,
So let me open up my
I'm
bag of
just-
tricks again to help you with it, because I got to look at it.
Well, I can
So
tell you.
here's what I'll say to you. Take a look at that, and you wouldn't be able to read it, Milverton, if it was that size. So you would have basically 100 square feet on each of those giant buildings. Okay, so 100 square feet, you can figure out what that is, 10 by 10.
I just did a quick calculation. The Ashleys that you see on that front page, the measurement of that is over 450 square feet, just for that one sign that you see centered in that building. So it's an appropriate size, centered for that building, and that in itself would have exceeded the requirement
For the whole
alone.
so
For
in
the whole
other words,
building.
then you're asking for additional signs all around the building, such as Hobby Lobby or Dave and Buster's.
What I'm asking for is just what you're looking at. These are the signs on all four sides, showing you all four, if you look through those 4 pages. That's showing you, the east elevation is the first page, the west elevation is the second page, the third page is the north elevation, and the last page is the south elevation. So it's showing you all 4. And the Hobby Lobby signs that I was telling you about too did the same thing. It was actually 4 pages I was going through when I added them up. Same thing, except it didn't show the actual type. It didn't show the letters. It just showed the outline of where the sign could go on the original PD, and then they built the signs based on that.
In your opinion, what's the distraction if I'm coming on 95 and I see this huge sign? Wouldn't that be a little bit distracting?
Have you driven 95 out there?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
So yeah, I mean,
That'd be
I tell you what I did. I was out there in the rain, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, going through here. I couldn't find where I was going. There wasn't enough, I couldn't find the signs. They weren't big enough for me. So everybody's got their own perspective on these things. As far as what it looks like in the interstate, I've got in my iPad, if you want to look at some pictures, I took some iPads, just shots going by. You can read it, but it certainly isn't in your face in a way that I felt was offensive at all.
No, I'm not talking about offensive,
I
but
think they did a good job.
distractive.
Same thing, offensive, distractive. It's neither one to me. I thought it was informative. I thought it was, well done, tasteful. I think they did a good job with the signs out there.
But, one of the issues with that area is it's a very high accident area between 265, that LPGA corridor right inside there. There's always a lot of accidents. So I'm wondering if it will contribute to additional distractions or stuff for that area with all the accidents. There's a lot of accident in that area, 295.
I don't know, Milverton. I've got to put my bag of tricks away. I can't answer that.
Mr. Robinson, if I could jump in for you, and I understand the point that you're attempting to make, and it's a fair one, that bigger may not necessarily be better, but bigger in this case can be appropriate.
Yeah.
And that's what we're discussing here. Given the size and exposure of this building, is this square footage appropriate? That's what we need to discuss tonight. What I brought up to Dennis was to say we've had a lot of these that have expanded our perspective on the size of the signage compared to what the LDC is. Are there opportunities to close that gap and have some commonality among like the 95 corridor or perhaps enough other areas where we can use specific items and say if we have X, Y, and Z, we can expand the sign code to a certain amount of square feet. We don't have that now, and that's why I brought it up to say perhaps that could be something with private sector's help to be able to make that happen. But for now, what we're talking about tonight is this square footage for this building under this circumstance appropriate? And that's what we need to be determining, in my opinion.
But I'm not looking at the appropriateness. I'm looking at the effects that this large signage is going to have on the traffic going down 95, how distractive it might be. I'm also concerned about part of my responsibility and our responsibility is to look at how does it meet the LDC code, the Land Development Code. and not whether or not it's appropriate. So when we're talking about approving stuff, we're not saying, oh, it's appropriate. We're asking, does it meet the code for one? And what are the reasons, the legal reasons, not appropriateness, but what are some of the objections that it doesn't meet the code, or why are you asking for modification? Now, I see that you're asking 6 times the amount of square footage, and you give me Hobby Lobby and Buster,
Dave and Buster.
Dave and Buster at 5,000, so I'm only asking for half of that. But what I'm asking you for is a justification for exceeding, right, the approved LDC
Hey,
maximum.
I can help you with that.
And that's what
Dennis, you help, because I think you are going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
Dennis, let the applicant explain.
Go ahead, Dennis.
No, let him explain.
I was going to give you a code, just the code section, and he can explain his.
Okay,
But
okay.
The Land Development Code actually says
Mhm.
signage for a PD is determined by the signage plan submitted for that specific PD. It doesn't refer back to it and say you have to have this type of signage. It says you have the signage based on your PD and you submit that with your PD plan.
That's
So
what the code says.
That's what the
Okay.
code says.
When you're talking about code compliance, that's the problem. We run into this all the time.
And hang on, one more thing.
Go
one more
ahead.
thing. What we do as staff, we tried to give you a comparison. Well, how much is, 2,000 square feet of sign? Where does that kind of fit with other things? That's why Hannah gives you a comparison, say, well, the code says this, or the PD was modified to say this. But the reality is the PD agreements do allow them to come in for a specific sign plan specifically for their development and their design. So that's what we have. That's what the code says, so.
And it's what you see is what you get. So a PD, just like you said, this has worked well for a long time. 36 years I've been doing it here in these chambers. I show you something, you get to look at it, and I got to do exactly what I'm showing you. Forget about what somebody's comparing to some code that's apples and oranges. Doesn't apply to this. There is no code that says this building in this situation should have this and this. It's just not there. Anna's using, and it's what she has to do, something by analogy. It's not a very productive exercise to be focused on that. Look at what's on the sheet I gave you. That's what you get, period. And if you think it looks good, say yes. If you think it looks bad and it's going to distract somebody, say no. And to your point about distracting, look at the west elevation. That's what it's going to look like when you're driving down the road, Milverton. That's your picture to look at. I can't see anything distracting about it. It's telling me that's the furniture store I've been coming from Titusville to go buy my couch. Oh, there it is. I'm going in. That's what it does to me.
I have a question here.
Please.
And
Please, Mr. Barr.
I truly understand. The signage looks great. I mean, there's no doubt that building this size would need that. But I also understand what Mr. Robinson is saying is that we do have a code, we have a certain limitation on the code, and we're asking for something way bigger. And, the applicant's responsibility is to explain why we need such a big sign.
Sure.
I understand driving on 95 and we see 50 different signs, and yeah, there's the Red Lobster I need to get to, or the Buc-ee's I need to get to, and Buc-ee's have plenty of signs. I think what you're looking at, is it tasteful? Is it clean looking? Does it fit the size of the building that you're looking for? Is it too much for the building? What will the other person come and ask? Would they need more signs to compete with your signs? And we don't want to become a sign wall. And I think that is part of the issue out there. And it's everywhere. Everybody wants a bigger, better sign, brighter, more sparkles, So we're trying to make sure everything stays clean looking. And I think that's, make sure our community stays looking nice, okay?
Yeah.
So, because I go into other communities and drive down, and their signage, it's pretty much similar. You look in there, not no big tall signs, everything is eye level. And so, again, that whole corridor there, we don't want to become so bright and look like Vegas Strip. We want to make sure it's tasteful.
Yeah.
What you're asking for me, yeah, you justified it, you looked at it, you're looking at it, size of the building, the location of the building, it looks good. I mean, eyesight. As far as what our codes have, our code said you can have this, but you bring it here, we look at it and see if it fits. Again, I'll say this, what we're looking at is not a sign wall. Rooms to go is there. They come back and say, okay, now, hey, they got 4 signs, we want 4, or we want 5. Sam's Club building, they're from the street. Same thing around the size of the signs. Dave and Buster's is more towards Williamson, so that's close to Inland. Hobby Lobby's on the other side, a little out of the way. This one sits right there, right on the exchange of coming on and off of 95. And we just want it to look nice. At least I do anyway, coming across the bridge back and forth in that area. So looking at it, I think Mr. Robinson had a good question. We just needed an explanation from the applicant. Understand the sign code. I mean, I think looking at the pictures and looking at what you've done, you've always bring good stuff to the board. And even Embry-Riddle with all their signage and all this stuff.
I did all of
It's for very nice looking, very clean looking. I think this looks good. It's just the reason for having such a large sign.
Yeah, there's always a reason. Yeah, and so the question is does it fit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we're
simple.
using the PD process to determine, as I
Right.
said earlier, appropriateness. Is this appropriate? All the things, Pastor, that you just said
I saw.
fits into that one definition. If you feel that way, that's great. If you don't, well, that's fine. Any other questions for Rob? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Always a
your
pleasure.
time. We have one green form. Mr. Nicholson, I see you hiding in the back. Come on up and tell us your thoughts, please. Good to see you tonight. Name and address for the record. You know the drill.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I did not see what you all are seeing. I saw what's before me. No signage. It just says the locations. So initially, you all were not expecting what he gave you. So you didn't have time to look at it, all right? It's a kind of like a rush judgment. I was going to speak at the end of the meeting tonight about what you've been doing in the past. There are things going in, you look at it in the diagram that they show you, and then it comes to fruition, like the apartments that are going in on Beachside on A1A. They are, and as you drive past, it looks like it's 2 inches from the sidewalk. And they have 4-foot side setback. So you have this massive building that's sitting you right in the face if you go down A1A. Is that what we want all the way down A1A? When you have the diagrams, it doesn't look that bad. But when it comes to reality, it looks terrible. I look across the street from my house, and I see the Daytona Grand. And I see all the garbage they put that normally people hide. They put in front of the building on A1A. All their air conditioners are sitting there on A1A for everybody to see. All their electrical boxes, they've got like 10 of them. They're like 6 feet tall, 10 feet wide, and they're sitting right there on A1A. So it's like, well, I didn't see that in your diagrams. It's just the little squares. But when you see them, so what I was going to ask you at the end of the meeting is to show it. I'm glad that Rob did that, but we need to know what it's going to look like when it's done. All right? If you could do 3Ds, if you could see this in reality, in 3D, what people died, they did that for the Daytona Grand. They had a movable thing. You're driving down Oak Ridge, you could see the building, you could see whatnot, all right? If we could see that and know what it's going to look like in reality, this, I'm going to look at it afterwards, but I think, how many buildings do we have that you can see 4 sides of? I know there are 40 buildings in front of me on Beachside. They're called hotels. And you see all 4 sides. The condominiums, you see all 4 sides. Can all of them do now these huge 5,000, you're saying 6 times, 7 times what everybody else gets to do because you can see 4 sides? Is that the criteria now? You can see 4 sides of a building, they get 4 times what everybody else gets. Is that fair? If you get 4 sides, you get 4 times the amount. You understand that? What's fair is fair for everybody, and what you're doing is you're opening Pandora's box. You've now said they can have 7 times what was projected. I understand they didn't plan on 7 times, but it's precedent. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Alrighty, Bob, we don't have any other green forms on this item.
I just say I agree with John.
Oh.
And I wanted to mention to him, so he feels satisfied, all we were doing here was taking what was a silhouette of where the spaces could go and filling them in with names. So you know, John, that's all we did. And I appreciate what he's saying. I've been working with clients and consultants to try to get these sort of 360-degree perspectives on stuff. And we've got some, we've done some. He just mentioned one of them. So hopefully you guys will be seeing more of that. I think it's really a productive way to look at things.
Okay, Rob, before you run off, any other questions for the applicant? Since Rob came up here, we'll take one more shot at him. Thank you, sir. Okay, with that, we have no other green forms up here, so before I ask for a motion, I would ask the motion maker if you would put in your motion to some language to say, provided all LDC modifications are accepted. Let's make sure we have that. Right now, that hasn't happened. We want to make sure when we make approval that those modifications are included. So with that, I'd ask for a motion on this item, please.
Provided all LDC modifications are accepted, a motion to approve agenda item number 4, Plan Development General, PDG, rezoning, DEV 2023-405.
I second.
Second it.
Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Guys.
All right, thank you, Rob. All right, moving forward to item number 5. It appears, Dennis, that we are continuing this item to the March 28th meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is actually, it's going to be a request from staff to continue this item. They did not have a quorum at the redevelopment board to hear this item and to vote on it, so they need to go back to the redevelopment board. Has to be heard by the redevelopment board before it gets to the planning board, so that's the request to continue. There was a mail notice, and this will keep their mail notice in place for that meeting. So.
Perfect.
So we need
Motion to continue?
Thank you. It's
Second.
your second. Thank
Second.
you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 6. Lucy, please.
Exalt Health Hospital Medical, HM rezoning, DEV 2023-028, quasi judicial hearing.
Very good. Thank you. Can we hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Dennis Mrozek, the planning director. I'll do the presentation on this.
Staff here. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead, Dennis.
I'll be
Please.
staff in this case.
No problem.
Thanks, Vanessa. All right, so this is item 6. This is a request by Joe Hopkins of the Performance Group on behalf of the property owners, Victor LLC, Renee Varsaw of Valencia, Pennsylvania, to rezone 3.3 plus or minus acres of land located on North Clyde Morris Boulevard, from Plan Development General Zoning to Hospital Medical HM to support a 40-bed specialty hospital. Oops. The property is located at the southwest quadrant of the Clyde Morris Boulevard Mason Avenue intersection, and Alabama borders the property on the west side. Here's an aerial view of it. The property is vacant and undeveloped. It's been vacant for quite a while. I've been with the city for 15 years. I can't remember anything being on that property. The future land use of the property is low-intensity commercial, and there you see the zoning of the property currently is PDG, and the request is to rezone it to the HM. So just a couple of things about the property. It was originally rezoned to the PD back in 2008. The PD agreement has since expired. As I mentioned, the property is vacant, undeveloped, and includes 4 contiguous parcels for the property. And the request to rezone to the HM zoning is compatible with the existing medical uses that we see all along Clyde Morris, starting from Mason all the way down to ISB where the hospital is located. So as far as a recommendation, staff does recommend to approve the rezoning of the 3.3 acres from Plan Development General to Hospital Medical to allow for the development of the rehabilitation facility. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission, and we expect this item to be heard at the City Commission for first reading on April 3rd, 2024, and for second reading April 17th, 2024 at a public hearing. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you. Question for you. The applicant itself is Victor LLC out of Valencia, Pennsylvania. Have we done any previous work with them? What do we know about these folks?
Well, I'm going to defer to the applicant's representative. He can tell you a little bit about the property owner and the developer of this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Joe?
Good evening,
see
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations on your appointment, and
Well, thank
Mr. Barhu, thank you for your tenure at the helm here.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Joe Hopkins, engineer with the Performance Group at 100 Marina Point Drive here in Daytona. Mr. McLean, the Victor LLC is a corporation owned by the Fisher family. We had a discussion about this when the Tiki Supreme project came before you guys a month or so ago. They're heavily invested in, they reside here, they own property here. Their primary place of business is in Pennsylvania, but they have taken up roots in Daytona and Top Build, Teledyne, Ocean Design, Speedway Shopping Center, the Tiki Supreme project that's currently under construction. They're heavily invested in this community.
You sold it. Well done. Thank you.
They are sponsoring the zoning request, and you know, we kind of thought really hard and long about processing a request for straight zoning. Time and time again, applicants come before you with requests for these planned developments, as I've done in the past as well. We felt really, really comfortable in coming forward with this. We do have a companion application currently under review with staff or a specific end user, and I know that's not on the table for discussion tonight, but we do want to let you know that we've tested the site. We feel very confident that we can develop this site within the confines of the HM Zone District. And as Dennis said, he's been here 15 years, I've been here over 30. And looking back on Google, as far back as the aerials will take me, it's never been developed. Mr. Milverton, your neighborhood as well, you pass by there all the time. I don't remember anything being on that property. But that as it may be, we do have a prospect, a very tangible prospect that will come before you as part of the site plan review process. Tonight we're here for the rezoning. We essentially don't have anything in the hand right now. The PD expired, I think, in 2013, and we have nothing in our hand to move forward. So we feel the HM zoning fits the character of the neighborhood, as staff does, and we'd like your support on the zoning request.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
Mr. Bauer?
I have a question, Mr. Hopkins. 40-bed specialty hospital, any idea as to what type of hospital? And the reason I'm asking is the neighborhood and I know a lot of folks that live out there, and the transition between the zoning and the next street over there, Alabama and so forth.
This is purely a medical rehab, not drug rehabilitation.
Okay, and it's
major-
inpatient, outpatient?
Inpatient.
Inpatient, okay.
Inpatient. And we can talk about that a little bit more when we bring the site plan to you all, but they're a very credible group. This is rehabilitation, knee surgeries, hip surgeries, brain issues and spinal issues, things of that sort. It's a complement to our current healthcare network, and we're really excited to bring them forward to you here in the next couple of months.
Well, this sounds like a great thing. Living out in Margaritaville as I do, with all the people playing pickleball out there, we could certainly use some medical facilities that will get us back up and running again. Any other questions for Mr. Hopkins, please? Mr. Robinson, right ahead.
Mostly a comment,
Yes, sir.
and I agree that never been developed. My concern, though, is for the neighborhood. It's an historic neighborhood,
It is.
and when you do your site plan, please take into consideration, right, how are you going to fit in next to that neighborhood and not overpower them. Also, when you do your site development, look at the traffic. So when I'm turning left onto Mason Avenue, coming off of Clyde Morris, that building won't be a distraction. And I hope that your setback will give enough room for me to make a left turn if I want to go on Mason. It's a very busy road and a very busy intersection.
It is.
So take that into consideration when you're doing your site plan. The neighborhood, right? So I don't want a 55 building this high and then the neighborhood is down here. That's what I'm talking about. It's You know what I'm talking?
I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're talking
yeah.
about.
I want
And,
you to
and
maintain
we are
and
light
preserve.
years ahead of you on this.
Okay,
And I think when you do see the site plan, I can share with you some concepts. It's a low-profile, one-story
Okay.
building.
Good.
We do preserve the scenic buffer along
Okay.
Mason Avenue, which doesn't have a stitch of plantings in it yet.
okay,
We looked at the neighborhood, and we are going to insulate ourselves from the neighborhood.
good.
We're not going to have traffic generation entering into or from the neighborhood. We're going to respect the neighborhood.
I appreciate it.
And we've already met with the Department of Transportation. They have jurisdiction over Clyde Morris Boulevard. And already agreed on how we're going to support transportation. We've engaged the city in that discussion as well. So our ship has sailed. We're moving
Yeah,
pretty
that
far
corner
along.
does need some reinvigoration because, you know, a lot of alternative route, ISB is Mason. And
It is.
this would make that trip a lot more pleasant.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'm looking
when we come
forward to it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just
One
one
thing I'd
more
like-
comment, just real quick.
Please.
And opposite side of that building is the old GBYN building. I guess on that side, that's right to the corner. And even making turns and so forth, or if you're coming down Clyde Morris, turning on Mason, makes it hard for pedestrians crossing and folks are turning. So I appreciate you taking a good look at that on the other side.
We did. We honored the visibility triangles and sight triangles around the intersection and positioned the building accordingly. And again, that is going through the staff review, and we'll be glad to talk about that as soon as they complete their staff recommendation.
Wonderful. Any other
One-
questions for Mr. Hop?
One other point I'd like to make,
Please.
Mr. Chairman, is when we conducted the neighborhood meeting, we notified everyone within 500 feet according to the new public notice guidelines. So we've sent out, I think it was upwards of 90 mail notices to the neighbors. We didn't have a good showing, which is good, I guess. But more importantly, what we did as part of our neighborhood meeting was to introduce the zoning request, but we also introduced the project as well. So we wanted the neighborhood to know what was coming down the line, what our intentions were, and I just shared that with you because we tried to be as transparent as possible in this process.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, with that, we don't have any speakers on this item, so we'll move forward and ask for a motion, please.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve agenda item number 6, rezoning plan development general PDG to hospital medical HM.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Vote passed unanimously. Thank you, Joe. Good to see you. All right, let's move on to item number 7. Lucy, please.
2024-106 legislative hearing.
Very good. Hear from staff.
Thank you, Dennis Morozek. I'll present this one as well.
You're on a roll. Why not?
Yeah, might as well. Last item of the night, sure. This is a request by the Growth Management and Planning Department to amend Article 9, Section 9.2B, local amendments to the International Property Maintenance Code of the Land Development Code to add requirements for visible addressing to the beachfront for oceanfront buildings. So this was initiated back from Volusia County last year. I think there was an incident that occurred on the beachside property, and they were trying to get emergency services to a location. And some of the buildings there didn't have visible addresses, so so people with their telephones weren't able to call up emergency services, give them exact locations of where they were located. So the that news made its way to the county council. County council directed their staff to put something in place to address addressing on beachfront properties. So the Volusia County can go ahead and do that, and they did that, and they approved something to make that requirement for unincorporated areas of the county. But they did reach out to all of the cities in Volusia County as well who were along the ocean front and suggested they also move forward and make some changes to have some visible addressing along the beachfront. So what we did was we copied a lot of what Volusia County did with the size of the letters and the requirements and the requirement to be in place within 120 days of the date of the approved ordinance. So it pretty much mirrors what Volusia County did. And I believe that a couple of the other communities also are going to be doing the same thing. So this is in response to what the county has done. So the buildings itself, and any building that's on the ocean front would be required to have an address that faces the beach side. Has to be a minimum of 12-inch tall letters or numbers, really. And the idea is that if anybody is on the beach and they do need to be able to access emergency services, they can get on the phone and they can spot an address from wherever they are located on one of the buildings to be able to get the emergency services there as quickly as possible. So in our land development code, we have the opportunity to make changes to the International Property Maintenance Code. This is a standard code that we follow. We can make changes to that specifically to the Daytona Beach, for Daytona Beach, and that's what we're doing in this. So we're taking that portion of the code of the International Property Maintenance Code, and we're going to make a change to it, and that's what you see right over here. And the change is to add the requirement for all buildings that are located on the ocean front to have visible addressing for the beachfront, and it's a minimum of 12 inches. And that's, right now the Property Maintenance Code says you have to have a 4-inch addressing visible to the right-of-way. That all stays in place. This makes a 12-inch on the beach side. We say 12-inch. Again, we mirrored what the county did. 12 inches is a taller letter. It's easier to see when you're off the beach. There's a little bit more of a distance. Again, it's appropriate for the location when you're out there by the water or on the sand. Sometimes those buildings are a little far back. The 12 inches should be enough. So it should be on the building. You may see some of them put it on the seawall, but they got to have that address that's visible. So that is staff's presentation. Well, hang on, let me just close this out. Staff does recommend approval of the request to add the requirements for the visible addressing and the beachfront of all oceanfront buildings. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission, and we expect also this item to be at the city commission for first reading on April 3rd and for second reading on April 17th, 2024. And that does conclude staff's presentation.
Before I open it up for member questions, and looking at the staff report and the information, Dennis, that you mentioned on the International Property Maintenance Code, I noticed that we're looking to put the lettering on the beach side and have it be at least 12 inches tall. I think that's commendable. I think that makes good sense. On the other side, the A1A side, letters can be as small as 4 inches tall. Now, that may not necessarily be a discussion for this evening, fellow members, but I think it's something that we should maybe consider and perhaps talk with our county and municipal partners to have some consistency. I'll speak for myself, driving up and down A1A, try to look for an address down A1A. If it's 4 inches tall, I'll speak for myself, I can't read it. So it may be something, we may not necessarily deal with that tonight. What we're dealing with tonight, I'm comfortable with, and I think we should certainly consider that. But perhaps this may be an opportunity to examine not only what we're going to put beach side on the back towards the ocean, but also on the other side facing A1A. With that, any other comments from, please, Mr. Ross?
Just a couple. On page 2,
Mhm.
your changes, line 4 and line 5, you have it written twice. This is maybe a typographical error. You might want to correct that before you submit it. And also on line 8, in section 9, I'm talking about number 9, section 3043. And in line 8 of that section, you left out the word B. So those are just typos.
I was talking with, thank you. I was talking with
before
David
you
about that.
submit
There's
it to
actually a
the-
couple of typos in there, and we're going to correct those with the ordinance that moves forward to make it legible and for the city commission to have, so.
And I don't know, this is just a suggestion also. We're doing the ocean, but what about lakes, the houses and buildings along?
Well, we don't have people that are, the boats are passing by.
Yeah.
But, there's, on a beach, you've got people who are just hanging out on the beach and sunbathing and doing their thing. People aren't doing that on the riverfront side. It's private property right to the water, so you don't have people walking up and down the riverfront.
But I think the whole idea is to identify if you have an emergency where you are.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that along the Halifax River, that there might be some indication if I'm stuck on the Halifax River and I'm from, out of county or out of state, that it would be a help if I can say, oh yeah, I'm at such and such.
Well, you're probably on a boat if you're on the Halifax River, and they probably have a different way of identifying their location on a boat, that they're not actually pointing to an address of a street. There's probably a GPS coordinate that they'd be able to get some help to, so.
Okay.
I have something.
No, but please, Ray.
I'm on the beach quite often. You know, now with all the new seawalls going up and everything, this would be the ideal time to do it. This has been kicked around for a long time of having it addressed. But I think that would be very helpful, not to just have a number, but the name of the building.
Name of the building?
The building on the back, on the seawall. Some of them have them.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to speak
Oh.
into the microphone, I think.
Some of them have them, and, you know, with the new walls now, it would be beneficial for whatever the PEC towers, and the number.
Right. Well, I'll tell you that what you're asking for is building signage. So you're asking for an increase of building signage that would be on the wall, so.
Oh, let's not go
So
there.
I just, that's
You
what
know,
that's what that would be. You know what, and I'll tell you what happens if you say, yeah, you're permitted to put that signage on there. They don't have to necessarily put just the PEC building. They can put anything they want, because we don't control what the actual signage would be. We would say you can have this much area for signage, and we won't control the content of what that is.
But you'd be surprised how many people, tourists are coming down that ask where such and such a building is. They don't ask the address.
Right.
They ask the name of the building. And, you tried to explain to them the red building,
Sure,
or, and it would just be helpful. I think that the hotel should do it.
Well, and-
I really
But
think
we
that
have no
it
control
should.
over whether they do it or not. This may be a scenario where you're talking, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. And that's the challenge, if I'm understanding.
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah, if you start opening it up, then you're gonna get signage on the buildings, and it may not be the exact name of the building. They may put out their
I don't mean the
McDonald's.
advertising sign. I mean just the
yeah.
name of the building, whatever the name in the front of it is.
Yeah, that's still classified as signage, and that's,
And we can control
Yeah.
it. That's the.
that's content to be able to, you can't control what the content of a sign is.
Well, some of the buildings here have the signage the whole length of their walls.
And that's signage that would be permitted in their signage plan.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's on their plans or not,
Yeah.
because they've been there for so long, but most of those walls are going to have been replaced.
Yeah.
Or worked on, or whatever, and so you're not seeing it. But having something, if you had to restrict the sign to the size of the signage, just like we do on any other sign ordinance, I think it would be beneficial, and it'd be something to at least discuss.
Well, they may have an opportunity to, with the code, there may be an opportunity for them to put signage on there. The question is, would you make it a requirement for them to put the signage on there? So all the buildings would be required to have the name of their building on there. And that may be where they're, are you gonna force them to put a sign up there? And then if you force them to put a sign up there, then they're putting what they want up there.
They're forced to put a sign up in the front.
They don't have to.
I've never seen a building on A1A that
If
doesn't.
they were smart, they would,
Yeah,
but
I've
they're not
never seen one.
required.
It'd be in their
they're not
best
required
interest
to.
to
It would be in their
regardless
best
of
interest, and so
Yeah.
I think that it would be an ordinance that
Yeah.
somebody would follow.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a slippery slope. We'll take a look at it and see what we can do, so.
But like I say, I'm on the beach probably 3 to 4 times a week. I walk 2 or 3 miles every day, and I happen to live close to the beach.
Good for you.
But it's surprising that the amount of people, they really don't know where they're at.
Well,
Any other questions for Dennis? Okay, we do have one green form here. Mr. Nicholson, one more time with feeling. Come on up, please.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I was at the county council when this came up. I don't like the 12 inches, all right? Because if you looked at the sign or the picture that you had, there's a nice blue strip across it. The logical location was put it on that strip. because that's where the eye would catch. Almost all seawalls have an end cap, all right? And what happens when they're 9, 10, or 11 inches?
Can't see
They
it.
hang over above it or hang down below it. The logical thing is whatever the size of the end cap, because we're asking it 3 times what we're required in the front. 3 times. So what if it's only 2.5 times? Can you still see it? Well, if you can see it 4 inches in the front, you can see 11 inches in the back, especially since you're closer. Only during low tide are you so far away that 4 inches look small. Otherwise, you're 5, 10 feet away from the wall. You don't need this 10.5 inches.
Standard.
Can you see this from where you're at?
Yes, sir, I can.
And if you're on the beach, you would be able to see that. All right? This is 5 inches. You can see it. So I'm worried about the 12 inch. Is a half an inch or an inch. If you need to. And the same thing happens, what happens with the Hilton. The Hilton is 2 blocks long. Where do they put their address? If they put it at one location and you're 2 blocks away, whether it's 4 or 12 inches, you're not going to see it. All right? And what's happening is that new development that's going in across from Steve's Diner, that's a little over a block long. So if you're a half a block away, what are you going to see? Actually, you're not going to see anything. So whether it's 11.5 inches or 12 inches is not going to matter. So do you understand what I'm saying? Or appropriate. Whatever the band is, it belongs there. And if they put it below it and they paint it, those of you who have lived here long enough know that sand dune comes and goes. All right? When I first moved here, the sand dune in front of Bernadini's house, the lawyer anyway, on the north side, was 22 feet high. And when Floyd came through, the sand dune left, and I didn't realize 20 feet below the top of the sand dune was their seawall, the top of their seawall. Why would somebody put a seawall 20 foot under the ground? That's because at the time, the seawall was needed. So the sand dune really does move up and down. So these numbers could move up and down as well, all right? So I'm asking that it be an appropriate size, at least 6 inches, so that it'll fit, up to 12 inches. And then names, clutter, watch out for clutter, because once they start the name of the hotel, then the name of the bar, then the name of the restaurant, then the name of the gift shop. Clutter. Thank you.
Slippery slope.
The name of the building.
Okay. All right, with that, that is the only green form we have on this item, fellow members. So I would ask for a motion on item number 7, please.
Yeah, make a motion that we approve agenda item number 7, Land Development Code Text Amendment, DV 2024-106, beachfront address requirement.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. All right, moving forward to other business, the Downtown Redevelopment Board. Do we have any new news? Any late?
They were canceled this month.
Oh, okay. You got the meeting off, huh, Mr. Newman? Okay, very good. Midtown, please. Midtown Redevelopment. Anyone?
That's Kathy's.
That's Kathy's. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
they didn't have a quorum.
Okay, and how about Beachside Redevelopment? Okay, all right. Affordable housing, and I'll try to run through this fast. We did have a meeting yesterday, and also a meeting earlier this month with some of the other affordable housing committees in Volusia County to discuss priorities, resources, and opportunities to work together. We're going to have future meetings where we kind of solidify that and just discuss what that is. The meeting yesterday centered on a discussion of an initiative called Transform 386. It's a funding mechanism to help homeowners with funds for home repairs resulting from Hurricane Ian. Meetings have been set up with residents in various city facilities since the storm has hit, and in some cases would directly going to residents' homes, and sometimes they're not able to get to said facility. So that is being worked through, and I'll give you more information at our next meeting. There was a discussion about some of the incentive projects that the Affordable Housing Committee wishes to emphasize this year. Two, that they are really focused on is understanding the process to approve affordable housing projects. There are so many pieces to this puzzle. Sometimes whether you want to do the right thing or not, you just don't know what pathway to take to do it. So we're going to try to work on that. And for us as a city to have a consistent standard on what we call affordable housing, under what circumstances can we fund it, and under what circumstances can we allow an entity to come to us to ask for help or resources. So it was suggested we bring in some guest speakers and some experts in these areas. But a lot of us, myself included, don't claim to be an expert in affordable housing. So to help facilitate those discussions, and our next meeting is going to be on the 24th of April, and I'll share more information as I know it at that point. With that, I think we still have, John, did you want to take one more shot at this? Okay. Public comments, Mr. Nicholson, tie it all together for us from a public point of view, please.
Three things, finishing up on the first one. When you see a diagram, they always show the building by itself, and it looks like in this pasture, there's all this extra space around it. Is it possible that they show the buildings next to it? I think if you would have seen the buildings where the apartments were going in, to realize the space is going to be this big on both sides, you may have thought twice about it, all right? But the holistic look, I think, is advantageous because the neighbors will see that for the rest of their lives, right? Secondly, I was going down to Miami, my mother, before she passed, and on 95, the old Holiday Inn put a wrap on, 14-story wrap, all right? And now it's quite common throughout Miami. So like we do wrap buses with advertisement, that's what they're doing to their buildings.
Interesting.
There will come a time when we will be able to do a wrap. There will be a time, because they can do it on cars, they can change the message. So instead of having these, what we had LED signs, they were like 2 inches high and 14 inches long that we banned years ago, all right? They're going to be coming a time when we can have a 32-story building with a wrap on it with constant advertisement. What are we going to do about it when that comes down the pike? I'm asking you to look at it now before it hits the bites the butt, okay? And lastly, it's been 3 months, so 3 things: submerged land. We have 3 submerged lands that have come before us that were presented problems. I'm asking you again, I've been trying for 25 years, to solve the problem before it comes back and hurts us again, all right? Remember the submerged land just north of Seabreeze? It blocked, they were gonna put a marina there, and it blocked the riparian rights of the 4 properties because they didn't know there was the dredging from the bridge was dropped in the river, and it became an island. Somebody bought it for like $400, all right? So I'd want those kind of problems I want to solve before they come back. Parking for hotels. The hotel has a restaurant in it, they have to have additional parking. I think it's asinine to think that someone's going to get in their car, move it to another parking space to go into the hotel, all right? They're just going to stay there. Car will stay where it was. They don't need the additional parking. Secondly, if you're next door to it, are you going to get in your car at one hotel, drive to the hotel right next to you because you need parking? Or are you just going to walk next door to the restaurant? I think we have to look at that because every additional parking space is expensive and it prevents our hotel, because we had 17 hotels go down after 2004. We've only replaced 1. We need hotels. I know Ann Ruby says we don't need any more. We absolutely do. And then third, the floor area ratio, I think we need to look at that as well. 1 minute, thank you.
Well done, on the money, well done. Any comments from staff?
Just one, and I just wanted to kind of talk about what John was just talking about, the wrap. We have that in the city of Daytona Beach. If you notice the Daytona Aquarium, where they have the mural on the side and the signage, that was a wrap that was done by DME. So that mural had to get approved by the city commission to be able to have that signage at that location. And really, that is signage, what you see there, but it's a beautiful mural that they have on there, so they had to get special approval for it. So So yes, we probably will be seeing more of that, but we do have a process in place when somebody comes in to do that. How will they be allowed to do that and to move forward? So that's all.
And I just want to be sure that we're talking about with rap, we're talking about the covering around the building, not the musical act within.
That, well, that's it. That's exactly right.
That's
Yes.
it. Thank you. I'm glad I got some laughter here.
Rap
Thank you
is
very
not
much.
music.
Any board comments, please?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
before you go, I'll be brief.
Please.
One of the things that I look for when I'm
You're going to speak in the mic. Yeah.
one of the things I try to do here is with my decisions, is to establish consistency. And I want to relay that to the applicants when they come with these modifications. And or at least I try to stay away from appropriateness, because that's too subjective. And we need to be more consistent in our requirements or in our discussions with the applicants for them to provide more consistency and justification for when they're modifying the code, not just make a request. And part of the issue is that we become inconsistent when we have subjectivity more than objectivity. And I'm trying to be more objective in my discussions with the applicants so that they present us with the evidence to say we should have a bigger signage or a smaller signage, or why we should be veer from what's in the code. And that's some of my questions that I would like the applicants to change behavior.
Well, Mr. Robertson, I
Thank
think
you.
that's fair, that we look at, practical and historic reasons for looking at things, not just to come in and say, gee, we want this, isn't that wonderful? But to be able to, as best the applicant can, justify that, and hopefully that's what the role is we have to do that. Now, PDs give the applicant opportunities to expand and have those discussions, and that is our role, is to say, the information we're getting, do we feel that is the word of the day, appropriate for that circumstance at that site at this time? So I think it's well said, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, being no more questions or comments for the good of our city, this meeting is adjourned until next month. Thank you very much. Thanks.